Hey everyone, Pastor Brian here. So glad that you are joining us, whether you are in person right now, like in your small group, or maybe you're watching this later in the week and you're not quite ready to be back together as a group. I'm glad that you are tuning in. Man, it's been so good to see y'all's faces in person again. Like last week, it was, it was just good for my soul to see y'all and to get to hear from you and ask questions and ask about life. So glad that you felt comfortable to come and to stay safe. Make sure to follow the guidelines with everything we set forth, wearing your mask if you're not seated 6 feet apart, and all of that. I really appreciate it. It just allows us to continue to meet together in a safe way. And so thank you for that. This week we are continuing our series called What to Do When You Don't Know What to Do. We've been following this guy named Joseph in the Old Testament, and he comes across all these crazy situations. And we can learn from his life and figure out some of these answers. What do we do when we don't know what to do? Last week, the reminder was, hey, when you don't know what to do, an important truth to know is that God is with you, even in the midst of uncertainty. And that's been so helpful for me to remember in this season of COVID-19, where everything's crazy and changing, and day by day and week by week, life feels like it's going to look one way, and then it shifts, and then it goes back, and then it shifts again. Man, it's been really good to, no matter how I feel in the moment, stressed, relaxed, anxious, brave, God is with you. God is with me through that stuff. And so this week we're going to continue the conversation, but I want to ask you guys a question. Maybe you've ran into this situation before. Have you ever been to like a Target or a supermarket, Kroger, Publix, wherever you shop, Kohl's, Old Navy, wherever you go, someplace like that, and maybe you've walked in there and you've seen on the ground a $20 bill or some money. I'm curious, what did you do when you saw the money? And you guys can share that in your small groups. I see there's a few things you could do. The first and the quickest and easiest would be you just pocket that money and go, heck yeah, it's my lucky day. This is awesome. Thank you, Jesus. I got 20 bucks. One time, though, another option would be you take it and you give that money to the manager and basically say, if anyone comes looking for this, I found it here, you can give it to them. One time when I was a little kid, I was in Kmart with my mom, and that happened. I think we found like a $5 bill on the ground, and she had me turn it into the manager. I have no idea if Kmart gave it to someone or if they just put it in their register and pocketed that $5, but there you go. That was what my mom said was the best thing to do. Or there's times where I'll go around and I'll ask people. This happened to me before, where I'll ask someone, hey, did you drop 20 bucks? You dropped 20 bucks. And I've even been lucky enough to find someone that was, at least they claimed to be missing that money. And they seem so relieved when I can find it and give it back to them. And so that's kind of cool as well. I'm not going to tell you what I think the right thing to do is. I'd actually love for you guys to discuss that in your small groups. But the reason why I bring that up is there's some options, and I think you could justify each one of those options. And my point is that sometimes we run into situations where we don't always know the best way to respond. Like the best course of action isn't always clear to us, right? Particularly if we're in situations where emotions are running high. Like if we're really angry or upset or anxious, it's hard to think clearly and choose the best way forward. Or if we're in situations like the one where we find 20 bucks on the ground, where maybe I stand to gain from this. Now, can I think objectively about it? Or because I can benefit from doing the wrong thing, maybe I can't see things so clearly, right? It's not always clear what to do. Sometimes our decision making can get very complicated, can get convoluted, and knowing what to do isn't always so simple. It can be kind of crazy. And you guys run into these situations in your life of what's clear as to what to do or what's okay and what's not okay isn't always there. Like for some people, maybe you think it's okay if someone asks to cheat off you on a test. Maybe you say, no, you can't cheat off of me. Maybe you go, well, I'm not cheating, they're cheating, so it's okay, right? Or maybe you're dating someone and you've got a boyfriend or you've got a girlfriend, and then you start texting someone else and you start talking with them a good bit kind of on the sides, and you sit there and you go, well, it's innocent, we're just friends, we're not like flirting per se, or I'm not trying to go out with them, or I'm not cheating. Well, is it the right thing to do, or is it the wrong thing to do? And you'll hear people argue strongly for both sides. There's all kinds of situations we run into where it's not always clear what the best course of action is. And we want to try to figure out in this series, how can we respond to some of those things? Today, we're going to read a story about this guy, Joseph, who gets thrown into a hairy situation. And what he does and what he talks about is so important for us to remember so we can know what to do when life and our decisions get complicated. So last time we left off, Joseph basically is sold into slavery by his brothers who are really jealous of him. And so life has been really tough for Joseph, but the good news is things get better. Things start to turn around for him. So this comes from Genesis chapter 39. It says this, it says, "The Lord was with Joseph, so that he prospered, and he lived in the house of his Egyptian master. When his master saw that the Lord was with him, and that the Lord gave him success in everything that he did, Joseph found favor in his eyes and became his attendant. Potiphar," that's his master, "put him in charge of his household and entrusted to his care everything he owned. From the time he put him in charge of his household and all of that he owned, the Lord blessed the household of the Egyptian because of Joseph." So, in other words, Joseph, Potiphar, this guy in charge of Joseph, recognizes that the Lord had blessed him and just had this special thing about him. So he basically makes Joseph his right-hand man, puts him in charge of everything. And because God is blessing Joseph, Potiphar is blessed as well. So it says, "The blessing of the Lord was on everything Potiphar had, both in the house and in the field. So Potiphar left everything he had in Joseph's care. With Joseph in charge, he did not concern himself with anything except the food that he ate." So life's great for Potiphar because God is blessing Joseph, and Joseph's in charge of everything. And then things go sideways. They get real weird, and Joseph gets thrown into a really strange and uncomfortable situation. Here's what happens. It says, "Now Joseph was well built and handsome, and after a while his master's wife took notice of Joseph and said, 'Come to bed with me.'" Yikes. Like, not a situation you want to be in. Your boss's wife is coming and tempting you and calling you something that you know is not good, that you know is inappropriate. It's going to cause all kinds of problems. Ugh. Right? Joseph had to respond. What he says to me is fascinating and really insightful. This is what he says in verse 8. It says, "But he refused. With me in charge, he told her, my master does not concern himself with anything in the house. Everything he owns he has entrusted to my care. No one is greater in this house than I am. My master has withheld nothing from me except you, because you are his wife. How then could I do such a wicked thing and sin against God?" And though she spoke to Joseph day after day, he refused to go to bed with her or even be with her. Joseph, it sounds like he didn't want to be around her. He started to avoid her because he knew she was nothing but trouble for him. And he knew that he was going to honor his master, and more importantly than that, he was going to honor God through his actions. And so one of the key things I think this story tells us about what do we do when we don't know what to do. I mean, talk about a messy, uncomfortable situation Joseph gets thrown into. But what Joseph shows us here is when we don't know what to do, one of the best things you can do is to do the next right thing. What's the next right thing you can do? What's the next positive step you can take in a situation? Take that step, and then take the next one, and then take the next one. And then you just trust God with the results, right? I remember reading in a book years and years ago, right when I first became a Christian. It was a book all about character, and in that book it talked about this idea of integrity, and being a person of character and having integrity meant that you did the right thing regardless of the consequences, right? Because sometimes doing the right thing is hard. Sometimes when we do the right thing, it actually means we get in trouble. Sometimes you know that if you're fully honest with your parents, it means you're going to get more punished. Sometimes you know that if you do the right thing, it means you don't cheat on that test and your grades go down. Or if you do the right thing, you know what I mean? Like, you can fill in the blank with whatever. If you do the right thing, sometimes it doesn't always work out well in our favor. And in fact, in this story, it actually doesn't work out well in Joseph's favor, in the sense that Potiphar's wife lies about him to Potiphar, and he gets in trouble. Now, God still takes care of him because he honored God and did the right thing. So even though he was lied about and people acted like he didn't have character when he really did, because he did the right thing, it's almost like God's like, "Hey man, I got you. I know this situation's messed up, but don't worry, man, I got your back." And Joseph's covered, and things end up working out just fine for him. But there is a good stretch of time where it doesn't look so great. But Joseph made the best decision, which is do the right thing the next right thing in that moment, regardless of the consequences. For him, he knew the right thing was saying no to this woman. And so he did that. It says he did it again and again and again. So we don't get to decide how things turn out, whether things turn out well or whether they turn out bad with us doing the right thing. What we get to decide is how we act, how we respond. And we can say, yes, I'm going to do the thing that doesn't cause me to sin against other people and definitely doesn't cause me to sin against God. And you know what? Even if for some reason this goes sideways or doesn't end up well for me, I know I've done the right thing and I'm going to be just fine. Joseph shows us that key insight into this situation. So when you don't know what to do the next right thing as best as you can. But I also recognize sometimes it's not always clear what the right thing to do is. I mentioned the dollar, finding $20 on the ground. Sometimes you can justify doing a few different courses of action, and I don't think people would blame you for taking a different course than them. The right thing may not be so cut and dry. Well, there's a couple of things that you can do to help figure out what the right thing to do is, and importantly, to help you follow through on doing that right thing. One is ask someone whose character and integrity that you trust. Right? If you trust that they do the right thing in their own lives, both in public and in private, then they'll probably help steer you in the right path and give you some good wisdom to follow, right? And they can help you follow through on doing the next right thing when it's going to get hard. And the reality is all of us, particularly us as Christians, we need people to hold us accountable. We need people in our lives that are going to help us make the good choice, the right choice, because it's not always easy. We don't always have clear judgment, and we mess it up sometimes. The best of us mess it up. And so we need people to help us along our journey with the Lord. And so having someone else to give us wisdom, but also hold us accountable can be really, really helpful. And the second thing that I think that can be really helpful too is you deciding in advance, hey, what kind of person do I want to be? And I'm going to make the choice that's going to help me to become that person. If you want to be the kind of person who is 100% authentic, whether they're around one person or a different person, or whether they're in public or they're in private, you're going to have to make choices that lead you down that path. And so if you say, you know what, I'm going to be someone who's honest. I want to be an honest person. Well, when you're presented with an opportunity to kind of fudge the truth a little bit, or to leave out some key information to make it your decisions look better, well, you got to remember who I want to be as an honest person. And man, that's not honest. So I'm going to be honest, and even if the consequences are going to be negative for my honesty, I'm going to walk into that, because honesty to me matters more than my reputation. Honesty matters more than whatever that temptation is to not be honest, right? We've got to decide who we want to be and then go pursue that thing. For me, when I started reading scripture, I realized I wanted to live like Jesus. I mean, I'm still very much a work in progress in that department. But so many times for me, it just came back to, hey, I want to live my life like this guy lives his life. And I still do it very imperfectly. Hopefully, I think I'm getting better at it the older I get. But oftentimes I can go back to this idea of who do I want to be? I want to live my life like Jesus. Okay, so you ask kind of the corny question, what would Jesus do? What's the next right thing to do? And then I can confirm that with friends and ask the question, is this going to help me become who I want to be? And then follow through on it. So in your small groups, I would be curious that you guys talk about this question. What would you do if you found $20 on the ground? And maybe what's one or two characteristics of the kind of person that you want to be defined as? Maybe it's honesty. Maybe it's bravery. Maybe it's justice. Maybe it's athleticism or intelligence. Maybe it's something completely different. But I think we all strive to be someone significant and someone important, or someone I would say honorable, maybe more than important. We want to be people of honor, I think. And so I'm curious to hear what you guys would say for that. So ask those questions in your small group, as well as some other questions with your leaders, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Thanks.